All right. Okay, there we go. All right. Let me get myself there. I'll edit that part out. Okay. Hey guys, my name is Katie and welcome back to Let's Talk Apologetics. And today we have Ranika with us, and she's just going to share her story, who she is, and we're going to talk about a little bit of apologetic topics as well. So, hi Ranika, how are you? Good morning.
Hey, Katie, thank you for having me. I'm feeling good. I'm excited to be here with you.
Okay, awesome. So, can you just take the time to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you're doing, and just a little bit of your story, and then we'll dive in a
Yeah,
little bit more as we get into this.
yeah, absolutely. So, Ranika Chaney, a child of God, maybe a little bit obsessed with legacy of single mother of five children. And yes, a little bit of my kind of the tough part of my story. Kind of grew up seeing a ton of domestic violence, got older right at the college, got married, and kind of got into that same cycle, right? Got into an abusive marriage, then had to leave with our five children, pregnant with my fifth. And of course that was tough. I was your stay-at-home homeschool mom, not making any income, but community, God's community wrapped around us and really helped us, and then was able to get on my feet and get work, get a home, and eventually go into tech, which kind of helped change the trajectory of our lives. Started to learn a lot about mental health, about how to reset your nervous system, all the things I could do to equip my children with the thing, myself and my children with the things that I did not have. So to not only leave a faith legacy, but a legacy health and wellness. And now I get to teach other people the things that I know too. So
Okay, awesome. Yeah. So, what kind of things are you so on the health and mental health side, what kind of things are today that's needed that you see that you're teaching a lot of like what people need?
yeah, absolutely. So, understanding what it looks like to have healthy relationships, understanding what boundaries are, right? So, a lot of people come to me are people who have been in abusive relationships. So, we talk about what the cycle of abuse looks like, the fact that it is not something that gets better over time, but worse over time. And so, what does that look like? What does it look like to be in healthy relationship? What do boundaries look like? Things that I thought every adult in the world knew except me, but it's like a lot of us are trying to figure out what does it look like to just be healthy, period, right? To live that out. And the Bible gives us a lot, right? It tells us a lot of what it looks like to be healthy, a lot of what love
Right.
is. But when it comes to living that out, especially when you have not seen that your entire life, it can be
Mhm.
difficult. So I get to help people with that, with the things that I've learned.
So dive into that kind of like your backstory of, you kind of dealt with that when you were growing up as well, seeing that, and I guess that you would say that that kind of played into how, your life as you got older and
Yeah.
maybe a bit.
Absolutely. So some people will, I grew up in this and I'm getting far away from this, and they, go on to have healthy relationships. And some people, which was my path, I said, this is normal to me. And so I'm used to this and understand this, minimization, blaming, not necessarily really being invested in, right? And so that was normal love to me, right? And pain and hurt and those things. And it sounds, maybe silly to people, but if that's what you know as love, then it is what you know and it's normalized for you. And so it really took people around me. God has always been gracious to me. Some reason that I had amazing friends my entire life, and they started to say things like, "Hey, Renita, you've been saying little things here and there, and that doesn't something sounds a little bit off." And so thankfully I was able to hear them and listen to them. And it was really them and community that helped me realize, hey, I understand that you may have seen this your entire life, but we want you to know that this is not something that is healthy for you. So I'm really, really grateful for community, which I know a lot of people don't necessarily have. So yeah.
Right. And how do you think God was speaking to you in that transition? Because obviously nothing happened overnight.
Yeah. Woo.
Gradual. How do you think God was speaking to you and revealing himself to you as what true love is so that you can recognize what it wasn't?
Yeah, absolutely. I think he was saying, I spend so much. So this is the way abusive, relationships can work. if you are the person who's being abused, you spend so much of your time thinking about what the other person needs. How can you cater to them? Because one, you feel like it keeps you safe. If they're happy, then they won't lash out and you'll be safe and you'll be happy, right? So I think one of the things God taught me during that time, it got so bad that I could no longer perform, right? I could no longer go to church and smile and think that everything is okay and protect this person. And it became too hard. You know,
Right.
I'm a mom of 5, like everything, trying to take care of myself, take care of home, hold up, you know, an image. It became too hard. And I think God was just saying, like, you don't have to perform.
Right. You
You
can lay it down.
lay it down. Woo! Yes, you can lay it down. But in order to lay it down, that meant that I had to actually be honest about what was happening, right? So it wasn't good. What was happening were not things that made me smile. They were hurtful things. It was letting people in, which felt really unsafe. But it was like I needed the help. And so I think he was saying, you don't have to perform. And the love that I have for you is not performative love. And I need you to show up exactly as who you are. And it's like the floodgates of heaven just opened up when I when I said I can't do it anymore. Like
Right.
people need to know what's really happening. And he showered his love like unbelievably in our lives. Yeah.
Mhm. No, that's amazing. It's amazing, like, the difference it's if people just understood, and I know it's so hard when you're
Yeah.
going right, but it's like, you know, when you are able you try to hold on the moment you're trying to hold on to something that's so little in comparison to, like, the blessing and what God has in store for you, you're just trying to hold on to this little
Ooh.
and it's, and he's so patient, and he's so patient with us. He is so gracious. I remember when I was in the military and I dealt with just a lot of issues, and I just had a moment. I think I had a good 2, 3, 4 weeks where I just did nothing but come back to my barracks room in a dark room, blaring CC whinings, and just
Yeah.
being just focused on just being in the presence of God. I don't even know if I was praying anything or I
Yeah.
was doing anything, but again, He knows. He knows what's on our heart. He knows what we want to say. He knows what we need to say. He knows what we need. And you hit those points where you cannot deny the presence of God, how He works in your life, the peace that He gives you, I think is the peace on situations that he gives you is amazing because people look at you like you and your situation say that should have broke you,
Oh.
but the peace that surpasses all understanding is just that it surpasses all understanding. I don't even know how I'm here.
Right. Right.
Right? It's only God. And so that testimony and that is so important. And so that's in our organization, when we focus on apologetics, it is a lot of like, okay, how does the logical, the reason marry with our faith? But that emotional appeal and having a real relationship with God is the foundation of that.
Yes.
Because
Yeah.
you can easily absorb information that if you're not rooted in Him, will cause you to shake and cause you to be, not sturdy and not grounded in your faith. It's on sand, not on rock.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And so that's just so important. And so like, how has, this situation and your children obviously being able, they're there, they're experiencing it with you, how are they?
Yeah, I mean, I think that they are I think I think they are doing well. I think they have their challenges that any
Right.
newborn have, and they come from, divorced parents. And the other thing I wanna say is I'm so grateful for community. When you talk about standing, it's literally them holding us up. But and I love how they spoke over us. That's what I wanted to say, is I was so afraid because I was like, "Now I'm divorced. Like, look at this. Like, look, the stats and all this." And I have friends that would say, "Look, this is not about the stats.
Mhm.
The children of God, these are covenant children." And I love how they spoke about over my children. And so I think that they have their challenges, right, from divorce, but I hear them like my daughter who's 14 now, she was young, she would carry her Bible to school and she would say, "You know, mom, I don't think that like if you and dad had not gotten divorced, I don't know if I would like be bringing my Bible and reading as much as I am, right?" That doesn't mean like you want to get divorced so your child can get closer to God,
Yeah.
but it's like what he does in spite of what is happening, right? And so that's where we go. Like we are rooted from the beginning, from before we left, from the time that we every day is like I continue to try to push my children back to Jesus, back to him. And that's all you can do. And I think that I'm really proud of them as a mom for the things that they have navigated and are navigating. Yeah.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it teaches that resiliency.
Oh yeah.
The
Mhm.
resiliency, and obviously you are a testament to them as well because they're able to see how you're
Yeah.
coming through, and that helps them affirm their faith, and you're keeping the faith. You're going through this and keeping the faith, which is the best example that you can have of what triumph and victory looks like in Jesus Christ. So you said you have a 14-year-old, so she is fresh into high school?
She is fresh.
Eh, How is he your oldest?
She is my oldest, yes.
Okay. So how is it that going?
So it's very interesting, right? Because as a mom, it's like I've never been here. And so you go from changing diapers to running after them to, just rocking them, singing bedtimes to real life, mom, I heard
Yeah.
this at school.
Yeah.
This is like, do you know what I saw? And it's like, all right, well, I guess all
We're about to talk about this today.
yes, we are. And I say, okay, let's talk about it. So, I have a range of children. My youngest is 6. And so, we're talking about some art project he did, and then she's got this real deep conversation. It's just interesting. And she'll say, the things you teach at home, that's not what's out there, mom. And I'm like, I know, but that's why I teach it at home, right? So that you can have this foundation of what's there. So it's just so interesting because she also is putting her faith into practice, right? There's mom's not carrying her around anymore with a diaper bag. And so there are things that she has to make choices for. And like, so I just enjoy the conversations. They're hard because you're like, whoo, all right, these are different. Okay, well, what does God's word say about this? And so it's definitely interesting and it's definitely like watching her be able to navigate the world. So yeah.
And that's why I think children are so amazing because you really can go through life without really establishing who you are, what you believe, what you think. And then you have children that are mirrors of you and
Mhm.
they ask you questions. They
Yeah.
ask you questions, they ask you things, and you go, what do I think about that? I have to have a solidified answer on what I think about this because you either are or you're not on on a certain topic. And so kids make you think about the reflection. And then if
Yeah.
you're wrong or you don't have a good, thought process on something, they cause you to reflect. The
Yeah.
conviction, they cause you to reflect and they cause you to, I think children also play a part in us growing closer to God too. As we're
Absolutely.
teaching them and then it's affirming our own beliefs and it's just a good relationship.
They not really cause you to reflect. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. They cause you to, if you do have a strong stance in what you believe and how you want to respond, they cause you to make a choice because it's like if that's happening to your child, you're like, hold up.
Yeah.
Like, wait, what is the choice that I want to make here? Do I
Mhm.
need to jump in and do something, or have I taught her? Is the Lord allowing the Lord to teach her to have her own responses, them to have their own responses? So it's like it's definitely a learning curve for sure.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it definitely is. So you're growing up, the church body that you were a part of, how would you describe that? Like for me, I grew up in a Black Pentecostal church, and so very different from the Baptist church that I go to now, but we didn't have strong teachings
Mhm.
as far as, I would say in comparison to what I have now, it took me till 25 to find the church that I wanted, which was a verse by verse explaining in context, what this means, whether it's a Greek in different languages or things like that, what was going on, the city, the descriptions of the city or the place. That's the story is taking place in. And it'll take us, we'll go through a whole 2, 3, 4 weeks, and we only went through like the first four.
Mm, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Because it's that much explanation and so much meaning and depth behind the word. And I didn't have that when I was younger. It was very kind of like the one or two scriptures and then very topical, and then a lot of just music, that dancing, that kind of that environment, black Pentecostal church. Just
yeah, yeah, yeah.
turn up, you got your shoes off, you're
Uh-huh.
running down the hallway, you're
Yeah, yeah.
and so, how was your experience kinda growing up in your church home, and how do you think that that affected, your relationship with God, or how did it set that path for you as you became an adult?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we probably had similar experiences.
Mhm.
I did grow up in a Pentecostal church, but you're a Black Baptist charismatic church down in Louisiana. And so, yeah, it was kind of like that. Take a few scriptures and then the preacher just goes from there, right? And usually it's every sermon is usually ending with, and Jesus died on the cross and he rose. And so like all that. So very charismatic. Had a lot of older people in our church as well, which I know sometimes we don't see a lot, I guess depending on where you are. But I will say this about that church growing up. I've learned in life to take what I can from every situation. They taught me because it was a lot of older people. You're living in Louisiana, right? My father was the first to integrate his high school. And so you have people who have experienced some really deep pains and hurts in the world. But what I did see is if they weren't necessarily reading chapters and chapters, right, during the service, is I saw people who had a faith in this God that had brought them through so much. And so when they would sing at the cross, where I lay my burdens down, I think I took from them that deep faith in the God. And maybe some of them couldn't read. Like that's the reality as well. The deep faith in this God that has brought them through so much. And I look back, we used to as kids, we're like, man, why are they singing and crying and all of this? But now just
Now you know.
exactly. Now I know I'm crying every day. And now you're like, why are they talking about being in their right mind? I'm like, oh, because I definitely should not be in my right mind. So I'm
Exactly.
like, I get it. And so I pulled that from the church that I grew up was this deep faith in this God that they could not see, but that has brought them, not only them, but generations of people. And so that is what I love about that church. Even though as a kid, it was like, oh my gosh, we're here forever. And actually, the church I'm at now is a PCA church, and we do the same thing. We go through scriptures upon scriptures and get in the background and all of that, which I appreciate as well. So yeah. Hmm.
So I definitely, yeah, and it's so there's something too, like I appreciate where we're at now, where we are learning like more of that in depth. But we went on a youth mission trip recently, and it was a youth choir mission trip. So they went to other churches, went to 4 different states, all the way up to Ohio, and back down. And they sung at these churches, and a lot of the churches were very small, but it's just like there's something so homey too about those small.
Hmm.
Like, it had, like, the little board that had the attendance for the week and how much offering was got, like, just those small little elements, and I'm just like, "Wow," it's like a nostalgia, like, "Oh my gosh, that was, like, my childhood," and
Oh yeah.
pews and the red carpet and just or the green, depending on where.
Yeah. I had the red. Yes.
And, there's something so homey about it, and the presence of the Lord is definitely there, and I definitely think that everyone is very different. Like, I was definitely one of those people that I knew God. I knew God was real from that emotional aspect because I'd experienced things with him. I'd experiential knowledge of him. But a lot of people that I talked to and that, I've interviewed even on the podcast, their issues were more of like the logical, the why evil and suffering, why, is this said about science or something like that. And theirs was more logical. And so it's been interesting to see as we've started this nonprofit and as we focus on the apologetics, that everyone's pain points is different, the different things that they go through. And even though they aren't saying apologetic specifically, they say, "Oh, well, I grew up in the church, but I had, a dad that was abusive to my mom. And so that's an apologetic issue of, hey, there is a biblical standard, but something is not being met. That's hypocrisy. That is, why would this bad thing happen in this good scenario? The question of evil and bad, good and bad. Why does it happen? They're all apologetic centered questions. And so that was definitely my experience where I'm glad I had that experiential learning first
Yeah.
because I definitely felt rooted in what I learned later.
Good. Yeah.
So, it's amazing that, you have children. I'm nowhere near high school. Mine are 6, 3, and 6 months, and
Love
I have time. Uh, I'm
it.
also a homeschool mom,
Yeah.
and so, I'm in that space where we're in the thick of that.
Yeah.
So talk about your transition from out of your marriage and that transition into what you're doing now. You're in the tech space and kind of talk about that transition, and then we'll kind of get more into just your more the apologetic stuff.
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, so after leaving, we lived with a friend for 7 months, and I gave birth to our 5th child during that time. And so it literally was just community and miracles. There's no no other explanation for how, like, we made it through that. And then, eventually putting my children in school because I homeschool as well.
Yeah.
Um but yeah, and then I was eventually able to get a job, buy a home, and was watching the Anthony O'Neill show, and he was talking about Bethel Tech, and there was a guy on there who said it changed his life, and I kinda did it with a little bit of an attitude, like, "Yeah, right," and yeah, so I actually signed up, applied, and went through the, like, 9-month boot camp, and I was like, "What am I doing? I'm a mom of 5, I work, and I'm signing up for this." But I really felt like the Lord was like, "Oh, I'm gonna guide you through this." And he did. I was able to find a job, 5 months after tech, and then went back on the Anthony O'Neill show to be able to tell my story, which was really helpful to other people. And so many people reached out to me after that I decided to start my own business. It's Ranika Speaks, where I do this, right? I go around and I talk about abuse, the cycles of abuse, and just really helping people and guiding them and doing keynotes at churches a lot, conferences, and sometimes at tech conferences as well. And so, this is my life now. And I love it too because my children get to see me, walk out what I feel like I'm doing is I guess, kingdom deposits, right? So sometimes as a mom, it's hard because you're doing all the things. And I'm like, well, what is Ranika's work? Like, how am I building my kingdom right now? Or am I doing work that is building the kingdom of God? And so I do believe that by me telling my story and giving back and investing in my children is investing in our legacy, which is also an eternal legacy. And so that's kind of what life is like now. So
Yeah, that's awesome. I I love that, and I think that it's so important. One young woman that I was talking to a little bit ago. You know, God can sanctify and move in any way He feels, and
mm,
so you are called to be a doctor. Learn how to serve out your ministry and be a servant role.
mhm.
If you're called to be a nurse or an esthetician or start a lawnmower business. I don't know.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
you can have a career path that
Yeah.
sanctifies God and glorifies Him, and it's so important to understand that and be, like you say, mission focused,
Yeah.
legacy minded. What am I doing for the kingdom? What am I leaving?
Yeah.
That's so important.
Yeah, I believe when we're living out our gifts, that is what we're doing. We are glorifying God. So right, you're right. Like if you're a doctor and you're great at that and God has called you to that, you are glorifying God. You ever see when you see people sing and you're like, oh my God, you were put on this earth to do that. Watching someone do what they were put on the earth to do draws us closer to the Lord because it's like, oh, God put that in you. So it's like, yeah, do that thing that
Right.
you were called to do. And so I know that speaking is my gift. And so I'm like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, Lord, but I'll do it. And so to draw me closer to the
Make a way.
hey, as he always does.
Yeah, and so that's amazing. So again, our nonprofit focuses on, like I said, apologetics, and so 70% of Christian high schoolers that enter college will leave with little to no faith. By 29, it rises up to 80% of them have no faith at all. And so, with your experience and how God has moved into your life, why do you think that number is growing so rapidly as time goes on for our young people?
Yeah. Like I was saying before, I don't know the exact answer, but I think what I was talking to you about before was, my daughter coming home and saying, Mom, what you teach here is not what we see out there. And so there's a conflict of like, how do I navigate that? And there is so much, right? So much out there. Whereas I was at school, I would go to school and I would see the differing thoughts that people had, right? But now they go to school and then there's phones and there's everywhere. We can see what all people think everywhere. And we're wondering, okay, does that conflict with what I think? What do I believe about that?
Yeah.
So many conversations at the dinner table about, Mom, I saw this or heard this, or someone sent me this meme. And what do you think about it? So, okay, well, what does our faith say about it? And then what do you
Right.
think about it? So there's so much to see and so many opinions. And when I was in college, I would say that I've had like a strong faith, but when I went to college and I took this world religions class. That thing confused me.
Yeah.
I was lost. I, for the first time, truly questioned what I believed because I was learning so many different things. And I remember being truly lost. And so it's having so much information, but I also didn't have anybody to really necessarily walk through what I was feeling and what I believed. It was like, I'm learning information so I can get the grade that I need for this class.
Right.
Still messed up on the inside. I
And
never.
then you have to do papers on it, and
Yes.
like you're doing papers on something you're not sure,
Yes.
you're not sure, but again, it's still downloading and
Exactly,
I
exactly.
felt that way with all my humanities classes, sociology classes, things that promote, naturally promote like a more secular or naturalist
Mhm.
approach to things. And, I got to write a 10, 15 paper
Right,
in defense of this now. So
right.
like, I don't know,
Right. And then by the meantime, they moved on to the next your teachers moved on to the next paper. And then you're like, but I'm still processing, but I have to move on. And I was like, who do I talk to? And I'm that young. I'm like, I'm not really knowing. I probably should talk to somebody about this to figure it out. So yeah.
So how did you work through that period in college? Because again, you maintained your faith, but for some people, that's that stumbling block that goes, okay, I'm gonna go. I
Yeah.
don't want credible anymore. I can't put my faith in this. So what do you feel like maintained your faith during that time when it was being tested? Like, hey,
Mhm.
you
Wow.
tested.
That's a good thing. So I have this thing where when people are talking to me about once they leave, an abusive relationship and how difficult it is, and I always say, show up in the places that you think are the right places, especially when you don't want to, and I think that's what I did in college. Like, I had these friends that we would go to church, and, like, I showed up there. I continued to show up there even when I was confused, and even when I didn't know what to do. That was my foundation, and I think God had done such a deep work in my life where I needed him so much before, even at a young age, and so I had seen him working in my life, and so I think I still wanted to be a part of that even though I was confused. So I just show up to church still. We
Mhm.
started a little Bible study on campus. I would show up still too, a little confused, but just showing up where I thought were the places that I needed to be, and then eventually, I think God continued to just work in my heart throughout. Yeah.
Right. And so it was definitely like that Holy Spirit was there,
Yeah.
God, for sure.
Yeah.
What can you say to people, to young high schoolers, young adults that are struggling in their faith in that way? Like what advice can you give them, based off of your experience?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say one thing that I see, especially like with my children and just in general, we're such a world where we kind of do things on our own. Like we like, okay, I'm gonna go through this, I'm gonna do this on my own. I got this. We get on social media and we just blocked out by ourselves. But I
Right.
would say even for young people is you should have community. Like you should have community around you. My 14-year-old has a couple of my friends as numbers so that when she knows that something like she maybe not be able to talk to her mom about, she knows that these are like a couple of friends of mine that she can talk to who are adults. And so I would encourage parents as well, as much as you can, to create a community around your children, because we shouldn't be doing this alone. Like, as a single mom, no way I should be raising my 5 children alone, whether I'm married or not, right? So, like, in community, let's do this thing. That's what we need to struggle, right? And so, so many young people, I think, are hurting, like, sad and hurting and feeling alone. And so, if we feel like that as adults as well.
Yeah.
If we're feeling like that, thinking about our young people and how do we create community around us, right? How do we not get to the point where I got to the point, right? Where I didn't open up and let people into my marriage. I only did it when I had to. That thing was so broken that I had no choice to let people in. But what if we do that before and say, nah, this is God's design. Like, we are the body. This is where we struggle. This is where we build each other up. This is where we say the eye cannot do anything without the hand, like community wrapping around our young people and us because we need it. Yeah.
Absolutely. That's so important. I think that'll be the theme of like like the importance of community, of fellowship, and of discipling period, basically.
Yes.
That's another thing that our organization focuses on. And so I feel like you can't have the teaching of the apologetics, which is just these additional information that helps affirm your faith and strengthen your faith without discipleship, because you need someone walking along in life with you that you can ask those hard questions. You can
Yes.
what is the inner workings of tithing, of how to have godly relationships with any sex, how to have a marriage that honors and glorifies God, all of these different things. And I think we are a very just isolationist.
Mhm.
Absolutely. But discipleship causes us to be very open. I mean, if you think about Jesus and his disciples, they slept next to him, they lived with them, they ate with them, they spent all their time with they knew the inner workings of this man, so much so that they can say, "Hey, I've been with this man for 3 years and he has not sinned once."
Mhm. Right, right.
Do we have those types of relationships with people? And we don't. A lot of people don't even have those type of relationships within their family.
Mhm. Yeah.
And so, I feel like that's something moving forward that can be established for our young people so that they have a safe space to ask those questions. And it's so amazing that you have a cadre for your daughter to
Yeah.
be like, okay, I can ask these questions and I don't have to stay in this bubble, because it is an internal struggle of like what you know is real, but you feel like there's no credibility behind it. It doesn't feel solid.
Yeah. And here's the thing I wanna say too is it's not just that our teenagers need us, right? We are adults, like, we need them. We need them. They ask us things like you said, that question and say, "Okay, what do I believe? Okay, I need you." So, like, young people are so important to us, and they shape us and shape our relationship with the Lord as well, so
Right. It's so, so important. They say as you get older, you get more wise. And I think it's for a reason, right?
Mhm.
It's for it's for a reason. But then with our young adults, you don't have to wait till you're older.
Yeah.
The knowledge, you ask God for the wisdom, He will give it to you
Yeah.
for it. And I think it's just so important for that. So we're gonna have to wrap up.
Yeah.
We have to have like a
A
separate
part 2. This is
yeah, because
fun.
we could definitely got into a lot more,
I
and
know.
I am perfectly okay with setting up some type of part 2 if you're
Yeah.
so we can kinda get more into like
Apologetics part.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely, but it was so amazing to just hear your story. I love that you're taking what you went through and you're making it now your ministry, and you're speaking about abuse, and you're speaking about these things because and doing it from a Christian perspective, because a lot of people feel that this either it doesn't happen in Christian marriages, or there's to be some type of there's an unhealthy look at it sometimes when you're looking at it from a spiritual way, and it's just like, how should I establish boundaries, but also forgive and allow them to and allow grace, but also have boundaries for myself.
Yeah.
What does that look like in a godly sense? And so that being taught is not being taught. So you're doing amazing. And I'm so grateful that you're doing that. And so we also make sure that we have all your information up so that we can share it and just share what you're doing. And I want to schedule that part too.
Awesome. And thank you for what you're doing, right? I feel like as a mom, I need this. So thank you.
Yeah. So yeah, we'll get back together. Make
Sure.
sure we schedule that part too, for sure. Absolutely. So thank you so much, Ranika. And this concludes an episode of Let's Talk Apologetics. All right. Bye bye.